All right, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for taking the time to join today's Wellbeing webinar, which is brought to you by Everside Health. My name is Jessica Lee, and I am part of the Health Improvement and Wellness team here at Everside Health, and I'm going to be helping facilitate today's webinar. So I am joined by Courtney. She is going to be walking us through wonderful ways to prep, reset, and revive for the new year. So every new year gives us an opportunity to really start something new and fresh. So she's going to be talking about ways to create personal health and wellness plans and ways to achieve your goals in 2022. So just a couple of reminders. At the very bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A as well as a chat feature. Please send us questions or comments during today's webinar. We are happy to address those at the very end. A couple other things as reminders, just to let you know, this webinar is really provided to you for educational and informational purposes only. And so we always want you to go seek the advice of your provider or other qualified health provider regarding medical conditions. So please do not disregard medical professional advice or delay in seeking care because of something we covered in today's webinar. So two other reminders. The webinar is recorded. So after today's webinar, we will send you out a copy of the recording as well as a handout going over some of the great things that Courtney is going to review with us today. The other thing at the very end of the webinar, it's going to pop up on your screen, just a real quick survey. And we would just love to hear from you. The Wellbeing webinars, we've been doing these for a while now, but we love the feedback that we're getting. You know, how are these helping you? What is it that you'd like to seek more of in 2022, specific topics, anything like that. So any feedback is absolutely helpful. So with that, I am going to go ahead and step off and let Courtney go ahead and take the show.
All right, thank you, Jessica. So yeah, my name is Courtney Handelin. I am a dedicated health and wellness coach at one of our sites in Waukesha, the Waukesha Employee Health and Wellness Center. I have been there since the clinic opened over 7 years ago now. I'm a national board certified health education specialist. I'm sorry, a national board certified health and wellness coach, a certified health education specialist, certified wellness practitioner, and a yoga teacher. Professionally, when I graduated from the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, so go Pointers. Professionally, also probably my biggest accomplishment is that we do have a podcast, Taco About Wellness. So if you don't hate the sound of my voice, and you're interested in what we talk about today and other aspects of wellness, I would encourage you to look up our podcast. And you can find that on Apple or Google, Spotify, really wherever you get your podcasts. Personally, I was born and raised in Green Bay, Wisconsin. This is a picture here of my family. I have two daughters, 3 and 6. Also have a dog, not pictured, but we do love being active outdoors together. I really enjoy learning and exploring new places, trying new things, and being crafty. So jumping into our agenda for today. So like Jessica said, we are talking about how we can reset and prep and revive and just really make the most out of 2022. Oddly enough, this is right now at this point in January is really a common time where people who have set New Year's resolutions, they start to fall off. The majority of people fall off those goals by now. I think it's something like 88%, really high, of people who had set a New Year's resolution are done by now. It's just given up. So I'm glad that we have this at today. It's kind of a good time to be like, okay, if the first couple of weeks of January, whatever your goals were, didn't work, we can just reset that all. Or maybe you were busy with family stuff or sick, and so you didn't do anything. You have no plans for 2022. We can always reset now. And really, that is to say, you know, right now we're kind of jumping on the tagline of like, it's a new year, but you can do this kind of stuff whenever. So we are going to be talking a lot about behavior change, and we'll take this opportunity to pull up our first poll question. But go ahead and look through these while Jessica's getting that up and ready for you, and think about what has been helpful for you in the past when you've made changes.
All right, Courtney, thank you. So the poll should have popped up for everybody. This is multiple choice. Please also know that they are completely anonymous, so no one else can see your answers or anything like that. We just want to kind of hear from you. So what are some methods that you have used in the past to make changes in your life? Have you tried to shift negative thoughts to positive ones? Maybe you've surrounded yourselves with like-minded people, tried resetting your environment, tried adding healthy habits, more fruits and vegetables, adding a 10-minute walk throughout your day. The opposite of that, have you tried to cut back less healthy habits? So things like cutting back on alcohol or less sugar, things like that. And then the last one on here is reflecting on what has worked and what doesn't. So I see a flurry of activity. I love that everyone is commenting on here. So just to make sure Courtney has enough time, I'm going to go ahead and end that poll and share the results.
Okay, awesome. So, okay, I really like that. Like you said, we can see a big variety in things that people have chosen, and there's not any wrong answer here. Hopefully this quick little activity was a reminder for what was helpful for you in the past, but might have also given you some ideas of different things you haven't tried. And lucky for you, we are going to dive in deeper on all of those today. If I can advance the screen. There we go. Okay, so we're starting off with reflecting and resetting. Part of the reason why at this point in time in January, kind of mid-January, people lose sight of their New Year's resolutions is because they're just creating these ideas basically, and not really giving it any structure. So the first part to making that change successful is reflecting and resetting. And that is a combination of things, really. It's looking, the reflecting, like what has worked in the past? Where did you run into issues? Where do you need to celebrate? Where do you need to kind of make some tweaks? And then also resetting and framing, how can we make that work better when we're talking about new goals or habits? So first of all, like I said, talking about reflecting. And I would encourage you to do this right now. If you have paper in front of you, write it down, or maybe just think about it, say it out loud. What were your accomplishments in 2021? What are you really proud of? And it might be also helpful to think about, things like work-based or home-based. What was productivity or time management? How did you take care of yourself? How did you make more time for things that were important for you? And also, like I said, what was a struggle for you in the past year? Were there goals that you had that just didn't quite formulate? And is there something you can pinpoint as to the reason why they didn't work out for you? So that reflection part is really important. And there are a lot of tools out there that can help you with that reflection part, that kind of look at, like creating your vision for the year. Before I dive into that, one thing, a couple resources that I like that really help with the reflection part, but also how can we take that and learn and move into the new year, kind of this whole thing that we're going to talk about today. One would be a revision worksheet that you can find done by the Balanced Life. This year, I think it was called like Patterns and Habits, something like that. The coaching catalysts, you don't have to be a coach to use it. It's out there for anyone, but they have a good resource for it as well. And then a company that I really like, if you're really into goal setting and kind of making the most out of this and journaling, it's called Cultivate What Matters, and their journal is called Power Sheets. And so it's all about taking that reflection time and really shaping your goals and making it work well for you. So again, taking time to assess, and that's finding the want behind the should. So a lot of times people make changes because they feel like they need to or they should. Maybe you or someone excuse me, has had to like lose weight, right, for a health concern, better management of diabetes or whatever it might be. And so that's that's really like the should, right? Someone else is telling them that they should lose that weight. And so you might have motivation for a little bit, right? Like, oh, I want to come off these meds, and my doctor really said I need to lose weight. But after a while, you're going to lose steam on that if you haven't tapped into your intrinsic motivation. So really diving deeper with yourself and thinking about, why is this important for me? How is this going to improve my life? Finding that intrinsic motivation and that, like I said, that want really will help you to sustain that goal, more so than just doing it for someone else or because you think you should. It also helps to remember that you have control over your mindset and your reactions, right? We don't have control over what the world's going to throw at us from one moment to the next. You also don't have control over what the scale specifically is going to say, but you do have control over how you react. So that can be really powerful as you move forward, and especially as you look back at where were your barriers in the past when you tried to make similar changes, and how could you react differently moving forward. So another thing that can be helpful as you assess the year prior and kind of visualize what you want the year coming ahead to look like is revisiting your core values, to make sure that those goals are really linked to what is truly important to you. If you don't know what your core values are, there's a lot of different like quizzes and stuff, that assessments online that you can find that can help you with that. So I'd encourage you to look at that. Some people also think it's helpful to find like a word for the year or a phrase for the year, and having a visual of that posted somewhere where they can be reminded, that can be helpful as well. And so just some different ideas for how you can really cultivate all the things around creating your vision essentially for 2022. And then that brings us to this, creating a vision board. And this can look like, the old fashioned, I always think of like cutting out pictures in magazines and sticking them on a board. And some people really like that. And some people not so much. So it could look like that. It could look like the images. It could look like journaling, just writing down words or things, that you hope to do. But it could also just look like a peaceful walk in nature by yourself, or sitting, having some time that you schedule in at some point to just be by yourself and think about the things that you hope to accomplish. One other helpful tool can be to imagine that you've already succeeded, and then ask yourself, how do you do that? How did you get there? You can start to tell the story. They always say that hindsight is 2020. So if you imagine that you already succeeded, you're already at the end of 2022, what do you want that to look like? You can start to help yourself find the pathways to get there. So yes, creating a vision board can be helpful, and it can look like a variety of different things. The next thing we have is prepare for change. So it's not easy. It's not a done deal when you just think about, I'm going to travel more this year, or I'm going to exercise more, I'm going to lose weight. You can't just, conjure up those thoughts and dreams and then call it done and expect to have accomplished that at the end of the year, end of the month, end of the week, etc. You actually need to spend a little bit more time preparing for change. So let's dive into what that looks like next. I do really like this quote here. The secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So change really is about the little habits that we build up, the little routines that we build up. And I think it's important too to know that it doesn't need to all be 100% perfect, because that's not realistic either. It's just building and building onto those routines. That's really the what gets the ball rolling for change. So part of change is changing your habits. The first part obviously is becoming aware of the habits that you do have in order to change them. I think if you think of someone who's smoking, for example, when I'm working with people who smoke, using the cigarette, there's so many different pieces that go into that. There is the nicotine addiction, but then there's also the habits and the routines. They have this this routine built in. Someone might have a routine built in of you get to work, you put all your stuff down, and then you go out and have a cigarette break after you've like read your emails and do all your check-in stuff. Or maybe when you are in your car, one of the things is smoking. And so just like habits and routines can create unhealthy things, we can only also look at all that to create a good habit. So the first thing to do would be making it obvious, knowing what you're doing, and how can you make the routine that you want to do obvious and easy. And that might be something as simple as, is your current routine having a current, like a dish of candy sitting on the kitchen counter if you're working from home, or on your desk? But that's just going to lead you to be eating out of that candy, right? Whereas if that was oranges, that might be more helpful. Or setting out exercise clothes the night before, that would be something that would make it obvious, right? You also want to make it attractive, make it something that you want to do. Again, that want instead of the need or should. That can be really powerful as well. And having like-minded people around you can help with that. Making it easy, and that involves reducing friction, right? So, and priming your environment. We're going to dive more into those in a little bit, but also making it rewarding so that it's easy to repeat. So we're going to dive in a little bit deeper on those here individually. So designing your environment for success. Up here, I've got two pictures. So there was a study done in a hospital setting, in a cafeteria, that looked at visual cues and how that played into people purchasing water. So the first image, you could see the green dots represent where bottled water was available. In the first, there wasn't very many. And then when they added water kind of in all different places, water sales increased almost 26%. And also soda sales decreased almost 12%. And really the reason is because of the visual cues and how powerful that is. We have 11 million sensory receptors in our brain. 10 million of those are dedicated to our vision, our sight. So really when we think about that, it makes your environment one of the most important things in how you're going to create your habits, change your habits, and change your routines. So like I said, for example, having something healthy available out and visible on the kitchen counter or on your desk instead of like a plate of cookies. If there's a plate of cookies, when I walk into a room, I'm going to eat the cookies, regardless of whether I'm hungry or looking for a cookie or have already had 3 cookies. It's really hard to say no to the cookies, right? But if there's a plate of a bowl of oranges out, for example, I'm not going to grab one every time I go through the room. But when I walk in and I am hungry for a snack, I'll probably grab an orange because I see them right there. So that visual cue really makes a big difference, and it can be helpful to set yourself up for successful visual cues. You can see here some examples of like, having your water out on your desk so it's visible. If you want to read more, it might be placing your book right by your bedside table so that you can be reminded of that every night. So read more. So think about, I would challenge you too to think about like, what are your current habits and routines? What visual cues are you giving yourself? And do you need to change those? Are there different things you could do to change your environment that would help you be a little more successful? And maybe you'll come up with some more examples or ideas as we keep going on here. So priming your environment for future use can really be helpful. And that could look like, if you want to make breakfast, having everything ready the night before, or really for a personal example, one thing that's helpful for me is, I like to bring a healthy lunch at my work. I don't have access to like a cafeteria right in my building. So packing lunch is really important, right? And that is easier for me to do if I do it the night before. So it's all packed the night before. I don't have to worry about it. And then in the morning, you don't have the excuse of like, oh, I didn't have time to pack a lunch, so now I have to get McDonald's or whatever it might be. Also setting out, exercise stuff the night before. Then in the morning it's all ready. Or maybe if you're someone who stops at the gym after work, you can have your bag all packed so that, and it's ready to go with you as you leave the door. You don't have to come back home to change, etc. So there's a lot of different ways that you can prime your environment for future use to make those habits just kind of in those routines just kind of naturally flow into place. All right, before we move on, I do have this quick little thing. I don't think we're going to be putting this up as an actual poll, but take a look at these questions. We're going to talk about, as we talk about, kind of preparing your goals, technology is one thing that can help or hurt, but we do want to talk about a technology detox. So take a look at these questions and see, the more that you feel like you identify with, probably the more likely it is that you need a technology detox. So feeling like anxious or stressed out if you can't find your phone, feeling compelled to check your phone every few minutes, that one especially, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. Feeling anxious or depressed after spending a lot of time, spending some time on social media. If you're preoccupied and constantly looking at the response you're getting from something you posted, or really being afraid that you'll miss out on something. And so the reason we're looking at technology detox is, one, is obviously, as you could probably guess from those questions, is there can be some unhealthy social emotional aspects that come along with use of technology. But I think really, as we think about making change, the amount of time we spend on technology, especially in engaging in social media type things, really takes away from the amount of time we have to create our new habits. So you can see here research done by the Nielsen Company found that the average US adult spends 11 hours each day interacting with media in some way. And while some of that might be helpful, we all know that there's a good amount of it that's probably just a waste of time, right? And not helpful, looking at TikTok videos or Instagram scrolling or Facebook scrolling. And I think that, when, like I said, when we want to create a new habit or new routine, if you want to add in a new exercise habit, you have to have time and space in your day and week to add that in. And so it might be worth looking at what your current routines are and what needs to be cut so that you have time for the things that are important to you. There are all kinds of things out there on your phone that can really help you with this too. You can set time limits, you can shut off notifications so you're not getting notified. Everyone, sometimes something happens on Facebook and you're being sucked in there and getting dragged down that rabbit hole. So that can be really helpful. The other thing too, like I said, is using devices can have some emotional impacts as well. It can disrupt your sleep. It can help lead to increased stress and depression, that whole comparison. So yeah, just wanted to include a little bit here on reminders for how you could maybe limit that technology use a little bit more so that it's helpful for you, but not causing you to waste time unnecessarily and or put yourself in an unmotivated state. Okay, so once we've got kind of all our big picture view, right, then we want to figure out how we're going to get there. What are the specific things? And that would be creating a SMART goal can be helpful. So a SMART goal really is, you can see the words up there if you haven't heard of a SMART goal before, but it really helps to make sure you've got kind of a very structured plan for getting from point A to point B. So you can't just say, well, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to lose 1 pound a week. That's smart, right? Because it's specific, it's measurable, it's attainable. 1 pound a week is healthy weight loss. It's relevant and it's time, it's in a week, but it doesn't tell us how you're going to get there. So then I would encourage you to dive deeper. Like, what are you going to do? What are you going to change? And this is where those habits can really come in. And that might look like, well, I'm going to start tracking my food and try to stay in the parameters of what that app tells me I need to do. Or maybe I'm going to add in a cup of vegetables with lunch and eat at lunch and at dinner so that I'm eating, a healthier meal and ultimately less calories. I'm going to cut out the diet soda. So I'm only having 1 a day instead of 3 a day, and I'll gradually work to 0. So that can be really helpful. And not listed on here is a concept called open goals. And I think that that's also really important when you're in the kind of more like exploration phase. That could be for someone who's new to something in general, or when you're just trying something new. So it's for people at all stages, really. But how that might look is when you're trying exercise, you say, okay, I want to start exercising this year. I'm not saying that you have to right away jump into the SMART goal of like, all right, I'm going to do a 30-minute exercise video 3 times a week. And that's going to help me get this goal going. Because if you haven't done exercise in quite some time, it might take a little bit before you can get to that 3 30-minute exercise videos a week. You might need to spend some time first just exploring what kind of videos are available to you, what kind of exercise do you like, and so that's an important piece too. Okay, so talking about exercise here, because it is a common goal that a lot of people have this time of year, I just would encourage you to start small. Like I said, maybe start with an exploration phase and kind of have a little bit of smartness to that, right? Give yourself like a month or 2 weeks or whatever it is to explore that. And make sure it fits in your schedule. And it might be helpful too to just see, can you just first start with increasing activity, like standing up in the first part of your day when you're at work, or after lunch. I mean, like 2 times where it becomes part of your routine that you're standing for things. Or parking further away. If you have like a smartwatch, maybe closing all your rings, or hitting your step goals for the day. And then nutrition, again, a lot of people do look at improving their nutrition this time of year. So again, I would encourage you to start small. You don't have to change it all overnight, but gradually looking at what are healthier options you can make. There's an app out there that I really like for nutrition. That's called Foodukate, Fooducate, and it can help you look at, it gives food a letter grade, and it'll help you find some healthier alternatives. So that can be a helpful tool. It might be also helpful to just focus on little things like increasing your vegetables or increasing the amount of water you drink. When we think about planning for our goals, it's also important to think about our barriers and how we can work around those. We can learn a lot from barriers that we've had in the past, and they're obviously not all predictable, but there are some that we know. Like if I want to increase my exercise, maybe I'm doing 3 days a week and I want to make it 4 days a week or 5 days a week, but I know on Wednesdays are a really long day because I've got all these meetings and my daughter has dance and we don't get home, I leave the house at 6 a.m. and I don't get home until 7 p.m. It's gonna be hard for me to add exercise that day. And so I might need to accept that, or I might just need to say, make my goal a little bit more specific and be like, on Wednesdays, my exercise is going to look like a walk, taking a break at work to take a walk. So having that backup plan and really understanding how your goal is going to fit into your calendar and how that might need to change is really helpful. And getting rid of the all or nothing mentality. So again, starting small, it is really important to, don't think of like, well, I didn't do it today, so the whole week is ruined. I say, think of each moment as an opportunity. Each choice that you make, it's an opportunity to start over. It doesn't have to be perfect every second of the day. Just because you caved and had a donut when someone brought in donuts for their birthday, you had a donut at 10 a.m. doesn't mean the whole day is ruined. So make sure you think about that as well. And then revive. And this being that when we have goals, like I said, we keep moving forward, but there's always going to be things that throw you off. So you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself too, and kind of keeping things in perspective. You can't pour from an empty cup. So self-care is really important, and hopefully self-care is one of your goals for this year. There's this quote saying that courage doesn't always roar, and sometimes courage means a silent whisper to yourself at the end of the night when it didn't go as planned, just saying, it's okay, I can start and try again this morning. And that's courage too. Um, so taking time to just kind of keep things going and know that there's going to be bumps in the road, and celebrate the victories when they come, and also acknowledge when there were struggles, and you might need to shift your goals with each season, not just seasons of the weather, but also seasons of your life. So part of all this that can help you keep flowing is have that self-compassion. And self-compassion isn't necessarily like I had a bad day so I can eat the ice cream. But it's more just being your own best friend, right? What would you say to a friend? And that can look like, okay, I had a bad day. I chose to have ice cream. Now I'm going to go for a walk, or maybe I'm going to get up earlier tomorrow so that I can get my exercise in to make up for that. So it's really important to have that balance and kind of accept yourself and accept the situations, right? But also learn how to move forward from them. So practicing self-compassion, like I said, I think it's easiest to think about, like, how would you talk to a friend, and kind of call yourself out when you hear yourself having a lot of that negative self-talk, and bring back the reality of that situation. Mindfulness can also be helpful in this, both as we think about self-compassion, but as you think about how to stay on track with your goals. Mindfulness can be really important. It just helps you to focus more on like what is happening in the present moment, instead of being so concerned with the bigger picture at all times. So there's obviously, lots of benefits to practicing mindfulness. I'm sure that's not a surprise as you look at the list up there, just because it's really kind of a hot topic right now. But it is a helpful thing to practice. And it can look different for everyone, really. It could be a walk outside in nature. It could be practicing a meditation. But just knowing that the big thing is being present. One way that I think is really tangible that I've heard people practicing, and I've done it myself too, and I've found it enjoyable, is try to practice mindfulness when you're doing the dishes. So next time you're doing the dishes, just focus on, how that water feels on your hands, how the soapiness feels, and the smells and all that kind of stuff. Can be a really helpful tool. And sometimes it's just taking a deep breath too, and noticing if your mind wanders, just bringing it back to the current space. So just kind of as a review from what we talked about, that reset, taking time to assess like what happened in the past year, the previous years, how can you learn from it and move forward? How can you make your goals really speak to your true self and how you want that to look in the year? And kind of creating those healthy habits, making them easy, making the environment more supportive for your goals, thinking about where your barriers are and creating like a plan B, right? Starting small and then making sure that you're building in time to take care of yourself. One thing I would add here is whatever goals you have for it's kind of helpful to look at it as like big picture and then make it smaller, right? And I think it's important to build in time to reevaluate. So that might be monthly, weekly, quarterly, whatever makes sense to you. And it might kind of change as you evolve, but with seasons as well. Like I said, it might be weather seasons, or it might correlate with like your children's school schedule, or it might correlate with whether you're working at home or in person. That will all change how you're able to move forward with different goals. Another thing that I forgot to mention when we were talking about habits that I just want to add in real quick. One thing that can be helpful for getting those habits going is using resources like a habit wheel, right? Tracking the habits. And that's like each day that you meet that habit, that you did that habit, like drinking X amount of water or getting up and going for a walk in the middle of the day, you can color in that spot. So that can be helpful, a nice visual. But there's also a lot of cool apps out there as well. And one app for habits that I really have enjoyed in the past is called the Fab Story, FAB. So be sure to check that out if you're trying to add in some new habits, and obviously connect with a health coach as well that can help you with some accountability. So we're just going to do a poll question again. These look kind of similar to all the things we talked about. We just want you to reflect on what's one takeaway, what's one thing that you could try differently this year.
Perfect. Courtney, thank you so much. There's so much information, so many things that we can, it's a brand new year. A lot of times people will start and we try and bite a little too much. So what we are hoping for out of today's webinar, just take one thing. What is one thing that Courtney talked through that you are absolutely going to do starting today, right after this webinar, starting tomorrow, whatever that looks like? Just choosing one thing. So a couple of options that we had on here, a couple ideas. By the way, I think it can scroll. There's one extra one at the very bottom there. But on here, are you wanting to reflect on successes of the past year? Are you going to take that technology detox that Courtney went through that I have a feeling a lot of us probably could use every once in a while? Are you going to make good habits obvious or easy? Are you going to focus on creating a healthy environment or creating a vision board? Maybe you're wanting to revisit your core values or practice more self-compassion, or maybe you're ready to talk to your Everside health provider about what some of those additional steps could be. So this one is single choice. Again, it is completely anonymous. No one else can see your answers or anything like that. But I've got a couple questions. So I'm going to leave this poll up for a second. That way we have a chance for everybody to answer. Lots of good flurry of activity going on. But with some of those questions, Courtney, that were submitted before, let me see if I can find that. I'd love to go through some of those as ways to kind of go, some things that people are already trying to focus on for 2022. And so one good one was how to stop nighttime snacking.
Yeah, that is a really good question. And I think it just goes back to that, thinking about the routines that you're creating. One thing obviously that you can do is look at what are your eating habits during the day, making sure that you're getting enough food in during the day so that you're not eating in the night because of hunger, for one thing, right? Making sure that you're not hungry. But most of us, when we have that nighttime snacking, we're not eating out of hunger, we're just eating out of kind of like boredom, or it's become part of our routine. So stopping that could be just creating a new routine, right? You need to cut that relationship. You need to cut the idea of like, I sit down, I have my bowl of chips and I watch TV. Then it's really hard. You sit down and watch TV, but you don't have the bowl of chips. So it might just be adding in a new routine that would help to cut that other one out. Like maybe you brush your teeth first before you sit down. You're not going to really be looking for the chips then. I just talked to someone today who said, instead of eating, she had put some other things by the chair where she usually sits to watch TV, like crossword puzzle. I've heard of people who do like crocheting or something. So they're keeping their hands busy. That way you feel like you're being productive, right? You're doing something while you're eating, or maybe you're folding laundry while you're watching TV. That'll help too, so that you're not feeling like you need to do something with your hands. You need to be eating. So that can help cut evening snacks. That's one way. Drinking water instead might also be helpful. Yeah.
Oh, Courtney, those are great. Those were a lot of good ones that I was thinking in my head. If you're still wanting to, it really is probably cutting it off, but maybe even just making the healthier choice rather than reaching for the chocolate. Is there a healthier choice that you can do? Use a smaller bowl,
Yeah, I was gonna say portion size.
Container. So many good ways to kind of help with that nighttime snacking. And I know that's certainly one that's hard for me. So all right, so let's go ahead and launch this poll so everybody can see the results. Don't worry, I've still got more questions that I want to go through, but let's see what these results look like.
Okay, awesome. Well, I love that. It seems like and there was no wrong one to pick, but a lot of people did look towards that, making good habits, making it easier and obvious. I think that's just one spot where we tend to forget about. And we have these big elaborate goals and we forget about all the little pieces that go into it, and how if it's easier, if they're all easier, it's going to be easier to move forward with that. So great.
That's great. So speaking of that, making those small goals, what are some ways to reward yourself in a healthy way? Let's say you're trying to lose weight. What are some ways to reward yourself? I know a lot of times we reward ourselves with food, but what are some other options?
Yeah, I would say, some people have rewards or set up of like when they're taking a trip and they want to be feeling a certain way by the time they take a trip. So that can be a good way. Some people choose to buy new clothes, or buy new, buy some more exercise clothes, buy some new shoes, whatever it may be. It might be, allowing yourself to spend money on something that you were wanting to do, like getting a massage, or going to, I'm struggling to think of like other things you might want to spend money on, but those are all helpful ways. And definitely I would say go towards things or experiences as opposed to food. Avoiding rewarding with food is not such a good way to to go about it.
I love that idea with experiences though, Courtney. That's a perfect way. One, it's keeping you active, right? You get to experience something new. And that's
Right.
a lot of people I've heard as something that they like to do at the, start of a new year. They want to try new things. So making a goal of trying something new every month or whatever that looks like. So if you're rewarding yourself with something, a new experience, that's a perfect way to get both of those in.
Right. And I think too, maybe giving yourself permission to splurge on things that do help your wellness. When we think of rewards, it doesn't have to be something of like, I lost 30 pounds. If when I lose 30 pounds, I will XYZ. It could just be allowing yourself to like, I really like this this virtual Pilates program. And yeah, it's $160 for the year, but you know what? It's going to be really worth it. So I'm going to reward myself, like reward good behavior by paying for, purchasing this, or buying this new water bottle or whatever it may be.
Perfect. All right. One other question that did come in. It's harder to lose weight as we get older. What are some ways to kind of combat that one?
Yes. Well, first I will say, I don't have a magic wand. If I had the like perfect answer for this, I would be so rich. But I think it comes back to, really focusing on those habits and routine, the portion size, what are you putting in your body, and when are you putting in your body, and how often, how are you moving your body, how are you taking care of yourself. Look at those habits and routines that you have. What of those daily habits and routines, what are helping you to be healthier, and to feel the way you want to feel, and what's hindering you from feeling the way you want to feel. So I know that's a really vague question, a vague answer, and no one really likes that, but looking at what you're eating, looking at how you're moving your body and where you can make little changes, that will all help. Some of the big obvious ones that a lot of people are that I work with who are struggling with that, it comes back to the soda intake, like the liquid calories. And it also comes back to the sweet treats. As we get older, we just don't need as many calories to move our body, to fuel our bodies. So changing your relationship with food and making it healthier and less about the food is really helpful as well.
Perfect. Right. I've got a couple more here, but I know we're getting really close to time. So let's see what we can get through here. But what about, I'm going to ask one more question, then we'll go through some of the rest of these slides here. What
Okay.
Commitment? Sometimes it's hard to stay motivated. What are some tips for that?
Yeah, I would say having a person in your corner who you can check in with can be most helpful. And that could be a coach, it could be a counselor, it could be, if you are someone who is managing a disease, it might be regular meetings with your provider. But it could also just be a friend, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes having a visual thing for your goal or your vision or whatever you want, having that visual can be helpful too, because you'll see it. But I think it's just important to have someone that you can connect with that can keep you motivated and you can check in on.
I love that, Courtney. So accountability partner absolutely can help us keep on track. So finding that accountability partner, whoever that is, it could be your provider, it could be your health coach, it could be your friend, finding somebody, if you're going to a workout class that maybe you've never met before, but you start seeing them every Wednesday night, building that relationship, they're going to be asking you if you don't come. So there's kind of that accountability to make sure you're sticking to those healthy goals. Love that idea. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap up today's presentation. Just a couple of reminders, Everside Health is absolutely here for all of your primary care needs. There's a lot of different things that we can do for you in person and virtually. So we always are encouraging you to reach out to your Everside Health provider if you have questions, if there's a chronic condition that you're looking to manage, everything like that. On the next slide, we will be talking about, I think it's on the next webinar, but I don't remember. Maybe.
There it goes. Sorry.
Okay, perfect. So a reminder, wellbeing webinars are the second Thursday of every month at 1 o'clock Eastern time. So for February, it's on February 10th. We are talking about metabolic syndrome. So metabolic syndrome is a cluster of conditions that can occur together based on certain health factors that we have. A lot of those are very much related to lifestyle, how much we're moving our body, how we're managing our stress, if we're getting good sleep. So we have a ton of information to share on understanding what metabolic syndrome is and ways that you can avoid being diagnosed with metabolic syndrome. So please reach out and join us for that. We'll be sending out the same links and registrations as you did this time. On the next, we've got a handout for today. So one thing we didn't touch on today was for people who, dry January is absolutely something that some people do for the month of January, just trying to cut alcohol out 100%. That can be very hard in a pandemic, but Courtney talked about the empty calories. And so when our body's, putting those empty calories in, it's having to work on digesting those versus all the other good things that we're putting in our body. So cutting out alcohol can do so many things for our weight, for our sleep, for our mental health, things like that. So two handouts here, one on creating healthy habits, and then one on ways to cut back on alcohol and ways to say no. So hopefully those will be very helpful for you. I'm seeing a lot of comments coming through. I just want to say thank you again for everyone to take the time out of your busy schedules, making your health and well-being a priority. And if you ever need anything, please reach out to Everside. We are absolutely here for you. Courtney, thank you so much. Amazing information. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you.